Good afternoon, LinkedIn. It's Ruella Crouch here from Ruella James. My guest this afternoon is Mike Ames, and he will tell you, I'm sure, a little bit about himself shortly. We're just waiting for a few comments to come through just to make sure that you can hear us and see us. So if you can see us and hear us, please pop a quick comment in the chat so that we know that you're here. If you have any questions, just pop them in, and I'm sure Mike will be happy to answer them. And the topic we're discussing today, I think is going to be absolutely fascinating, speaking to Mike behind the scenes. It's on building relationships, not chasing vacancies. So this is our 11th show. And as I said, if you can hear and see us, pop a comment in the chat box. Any questions, put them in there as well. So Mike, let's just hope somebody is out there hearing us. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? Because you have done some amazing things. You've sold 2 recruitment businesses for millions of pounds, if you don't mind me telling people how successful you've been. But yeah, tell us what you've done in the past, and let's give us a sense of what you're up to now, because I think that would be really useful to the audience.
Okay, I'll keep it nice and brief because they've not really come to listen about me, have they? Hopefully they've come to listen.
Yeah. But it just shows how credible you are.
Well, okay, credibility. Let's put a tick in that box then.
Yeah.
Okay, very quickly. Started in recruitment in '88, long time. Lots of things have changed since then, but some things haven't changed at all, actually, which I'm sure will come out a little later in the session. Started my first business in '89, sold it in 1998, so that's 10 years later. We were doing about 40 million quid turnover, about £2.5 million EBIT profit. Sold it for 24 million pounds headline price. Worked for them for a bit, an American company. And then I know, lovely people, but anyway. So, and then set another business up called Crimson, which was in 2001. Sold that to Harvey Nash in 2017, and they made us sign these draconian gagging orders. We wouldn't say anything, and then they published everything on the internet, so you can see what they sold for 15 million quid. But the point is that there was a secret behind all of that, and part of that is what we're going to talk about today, which is the scalability piece. And I'm just excited to be here. I was just saying before I came on as well, just want to say this, that I'm really looking forward to coming on the show, because Ruella makes everybody feel so relaxed. She makes us all look good, and God knows we need it.
Thank you. Well, look, let's just dive straight in. One of the things that we sort of put as a headline on the post is why firms don't scale. And I'd just be interested to hear your view on that, because everybody has the intention of coming into recruitment, whether they're building a desk or building a business, of scaling, because we want it to be profitable, so that as business owners, and we want to make money, we want our teams to make money. So why don't firms perhaps scale to the level that they should, or could, the potential that they have?
Okay, well, the data tells us that the majority of recruitment companies don't scale. I think it's something like 73% of recruitment firms in this country have got less than 10 staff associated with them.
Wow, these are huge numbers.
Yeah, about half of them, about 20,000 companies of one-man bands, really very small. Now, some of those people don't want to scale. They're very happy just having the lifestyle, which is fine. But some do, and they obviously can't, because that's what the data is telling us. There's a number of reasons for that. But if you're a good recruiter, one of the reasons is that you get into this trap whereby, got no work, well, okay, go and get some then. So ring up your lapsed clients and current clients. Got any work? No, fine. Then you've got to hit the markets. You've got to go to new people, prospects, and see if you can get a vacancy. If you're lucky enough to get one from somewhere, you then stop all of that, put that to one side, and get stuck in and find some candidates, because you can make some money. As soon as that is finished, the vacancy is closed, you win it, or someone else wins it, it's gone. You start again and get the next vacancy. It's almost impossible to scale that model very easily. Right. And it's a very stressful life. If you're a young recruiter, in your 20s or late 30s, can you imagine doing that for the next 30 years? Really? Because I can't. Man, that's tough, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked there about how chasing vacancies can be a bit of a trap, and we've talked about how building relationships is the best way.
Yeah.
And over COVID, obviously, everyone's been a lot more collaborative. Even my team have said to me, clients are a lot nicer, candidates are a lot nicer when you're perhaps headhunting or trying to find an opportunity for them. So why is now the time to really focus on this relationship piece?
Okay, well, that's one of the things that hasn't changed. You know, when I started, I was trained in how to build relationships. That's how I was trained in all sorts of things at the company I worked for in the 80s. But we were trained to build relationships with key decision makers in high value clients. I mean, that was the deal, because you want to be, what the term that they use now in technology is, to be designed in. You want to be designed in.
And what does designed in mean? Can you give us a definition of that?
Okay, very good. So what that means is that, okay, I'll give you an example and then I'll expand upon it. So if you own your own house, if you've owned it for some time, the chances are you've had some electrical work done on it. You don't have to go out and find the perfect electrician every time. If you've used somebody that's done a good job for you, that seems reasonably priced, that's quite tidy and doesn't mess you about, you can use them again. They're designed into your solution. You just ring them up, say, need a socket changing. Can you come and do it? Yeah, sure, I'll fit it in. And you want to be like that. When you build up your relationships with your clients, you want to be the equivalent of that electrician. When somebody needs somebody, they just ring them, because that's the person that does our work for us.
Yeah.
And that's what you get with strong relationships. That's how it works. It's designed into the solution. Where the big money is, really big money.
And you talked about high value clients. So what does high value again mean to you, or what should it mean to any recruiter deciding what a high value client looks like?
Okay, so they're going to vary according to what you do and who you do it with, but there are 4 things that you can look out for. First thing to say, which isn't one of the 4 really, is that high volume isn't necessarily high value, because high volume tends to be lower margins. You have to work a lot harder. It's normally red water. You know, you're scrabbling around trying to get the deal and corner it and place someone, competing against 1,000 other recruiters. So high volume, not so much. High value, 4 things. Firstly, is that the company that you're targeting has a high lifetime value, LTV. So they buy more than one time. They buy 2 or 3 times a year, 4 or 5 times a year, who knows? But they are regular purchasers, hirers, and they use agencies on a regular basis. The second thing is that they pay what you're worth. Right? So they're not looking at that thing, well, can you do this for £1,000? I'm sorry, what now? You know, what? No, I don't do it for £1,000. But the market's bad. No, they are not like that. So I'm not saying they're an easy touch or that you can rip them off or anything like that. I'm simply saying that they are prepared to pay the value that you give them. The third thing is that they get requirements that you can fill. So it's all well having requirements, but if you can't fill them, if they're so obscure or weird, not going to make money at that. And then the fourth thing is that they value relationships. They actually want to design people into their world, because that's how they want to run things. They're not the kind of people that want to play one supplier off another to get the price down, shop around. They're not into that, really. I've got my suppliers. I'm happy with them. Do you know what? I think I'll stick with them. Now, for those people out there that do chase vacancies, I'm sure you've come up against that quite a lot. It's like, no, thank you. I've already got some suppliers. You want to be one of those guys, because those are the ones that sit there, you know, looking at their nails. Another requirement's come in. Ding, another requirement. Yeah, I can do that for you. I've oversimplified that, and you know that, Rue. But and that's what you want, and that's what relationships give you. So you have to find people that correspond to those 4 conditions, because if you do, it changes everything.
And you made a really interesting point behind the scenes. You're talking about changing the narrative of the conversation, which I loved, because you gave a really great example. I think you said something on the lines of, you're ringing up a client, they're saying they haven't got a role or an opportunity, or maybe, you know, they do, but they don't quite want to give it to you. And you talked about turning that around to be talking about something else. Do you remember that example that you gave about talking about, can you just explain that, because it was really good?
Well, the thing with recruitment now, it's a very transactional business. So people are very focused on the end of the month, because that's when the numbers come in, and that's when the commission gets paid, and that's how you keep your job, you know. So there is a lot of focus on the end of the month, and it's therefore very transactional. So if you are ringing round, you know, have you got any work? No, you haven't. Well, I'll ring you back next week then, or next month, or whenever it is, because I've got to get some work. So I've got to go and get somebody who can give me an opportunity. In the same way that if you're dealing in the contract space, you can treat contractors in exactly the same way, and they don't like it, because basically what you're saying to them is, well, you're just a source of money, aren't you? You're just a source of revenue. I don't care about you as a person, despite all the hoo-ha, the bushy hoo-ha that goes around it. You're just a source of cash, and they don't like it. Who would, really? So you've got to move away from being transaction. You've got to change the narrative, really. So there's a thing called the buying cycle. So if somebody buys something more than once, there's this cycle that you go around.
Yes.
And there's two stages that you're interested in. One is the buying zone, and the other one is the pre-buying zone. So, you know, if you're buying a car, you might buy a car every 3 years. So the circle is 3 years long. And you have a buying zone where you're actively looking for 2 or 3 weeks, and maybe 2 or 3 weeks before that when you're looking at magazines and thinking it through. That's the buying zone and the pre-buying zone. So if I was going to try and sell you a car, I'm best to hit you in the pre-buying zone, really, because that's when you're thinking, you're open to ideas and thoughts. If I've got you in the buying zone, the chances are you've made up your mind, and you maybe even engage with the suppliers. So if you're a transactional salesperson, what you're doing is ringing round this cycle, and eventually you hit someone in the pre-buying zone who doesn't have a bunch of suppliers that they're happy with, who have a need, or they're going to have a need, and they're happy to talk to you. Well, good luck with that one, because that doesn't sound like too much fun to me. Got to be honest with you, right? So when you look at this whole piece of transactionalism versus building relationships, what you do is you change the narrative away from, have you got a piece of work for me? You haven't, I'm going somewhere else then. To, okay, well, look, I want to be a supplier to you, and I don't care whether it takes 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, or 6 years. I firmly believe that I can actually help you and give you a great service. Now, you might not believe me, and I wouldn't doubt that for a second. I wouldn't suggest for a minute that you should believe me. But over the next few months, I'm going to build a relationship with you based on value. So you give me what your problem is, and you share with me what you're interested in, or you know what, I'll just best guess in most cases, and I'll give you some content which meets that need. And over a period of time, it changes the dialogue, because that cycle where somebody's only interested in a very small bit of it, if you get the right content, they're interested all the time. And this is how we sell. This is how we grow. And this is the main thrust of building relationships, is change the narrative.
So you're talking about finding something that they need instead, because they don't have what you're looking for right now. Find out something else that they need, and then find some sort of value, or give them back something else instead. And you produce a lot of content. How do you go about finding that content? Because you're not necessarily always producing yourself. How do you go about producing content of value for your clients?
That's a really big story, really. For those who are interested, we're running a webinar on that very subject. It's an hour's webinar. It's completely free. It's a couple of weeks' time, and I'll with your permission, Ru, I'll put a link
of course,
for people to sign up for.
Yeah.
But the whole point of this is that you need to understand the world that you're selling into. So there's a saying that goes back a long way, that if you want to sell to the construction industry, you've got to know the price of a bag of cement. It's obviously a metaphor, but the point is, you've got to understand the nuances of what's happening in the market that you're selling into, because from that you can then work out what it is that would grab attention. You can test it very simply. So if you've got a subject that you think is interesting, you can blast out a long form LinkedIn post, long form LinkedIn post.
Yes.
You can whack a long form LinkedIn post and see what happens. If you don't get any traction with it, well, okay, that's not a very good subject then. Back to the drawing board. If it takes off, then you can think of what's called chunky content. So some research, or something that's got more content, more substance to it, or a show like this, or a webinar, or a round table or something. But now you're safe in the knowledge that actually, I'm pretty certain, because of what I've done already on LinkedIn, that this piece of content will be popular. So I can afford to spend a bit of time on it to build it. And it's just not rocket science. Honestly, it's the easiest thing in the world. Back in the old days, before we had content, we used to go drinking a lot and take people to play golf. And that was the currency. That was the way in which we added value. We don't need to do that now, unless you particularly want to, of course.
Yeah, of course. I'm just going to say hello to a few people. We've got Karen, Caroline, Claire, Rachel. Thank you so much for watching the show. Really appreciate you being here. So, Mike, what are the three things that we can do now to build more relationships, because I'm sure a lot of what you're saying doesn't just apply to clients, it applies to candidates as well. And everyone's currency of what they're looking for is slightly different at the moment. But the big news from our perspective is we need candidates. But I know there are still clients and markets that are just kind of coming back to be successful and profitable again.
The first thing to say, it depends on your viewpoint, but I was always taught, my background is contract and freelance. I didn't really do very much. And we were always taught that the contractors are clients, they're customers like anyone else. You know, they buy a service from us. In fact, weirdly, they were our single biggest source of new clients, weirdly. And we used to spend more money on them, entertaining them, like drinks and curries and things, per capita than we used to spend on our clients, weirdly. I know, but they were such good value for it. But so I think that if you think of your contractors or candidates as clients,
yes,
you know,
that's a very good point. Yeah,
they're just interested in things. Everyone's interested in something, for goodness sakes. So I think the first thing, right? Okay, let's go back to the question that you said. First three things, right? I think the first thing is to change your mentality. So commit yourself to being a relationship salesperson. And that's a commitment rather than changing anything that you do. Because if you work for another outfit, then the chances are you have to work to their rules. And if they're a transactional business, then you've got to be transactional, because what else are you going to do? Oh, I didn't manage to hit my targets this month because Mike Ames said I should build some relationships that are going to pay dividends in 18 months. No, and don't mention me either, because, you know, they won't like it. No, however, if you keep doing what you're doing, you'll be doing it for a very long time. So there has to be a middle ground, and there is. And the first thing that you do is you do that mental twist to say, I am now a relationship person currently trapped in a transactional body, but I'm going to make that shift away from it. And my viewpoint is that you can find 20 minutes a day. I mean, if you can't, just find 10 minutes a day to do relationship building activities. Let me be very clear what I mean by that.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
It's not about being transactional. It's not about trying to have a conversation or do anything with anybody that at the end of it, you can somehow turn it to a profit. And I know a lot of people are trained that way. There are trainers out there I know that do that. Even now, they still do that. You know, always be selling. It's like, really? I mean, are we in the 1980s anymore? Is Tony Byrne still doing his training in I don't know. So.
Oh, I love Tony Byrne.
We all love Tony Byrne.
I trained with Tony Byrne.
We all loved. I had the tapes given to me back in the day.
I've still got the tapes. I've still got the videos. I haven't got a video to play them on. But
boys and girls, you don't need, if you don't have no idea what we're talking about, go onto YouTube and search on Tony Byrne, Byrne. But no, you don't. It's a very transactional kind of guy. But you don't need to do that. What you need to do is find a little time to just engage with people. Talk to them, and at the end of the conversation say cheerio, as opposed to, oh, by the way, you know, if I can help you, will let me know, won't you? Really.
So just avoid those standard cliches.
Really? I mean, I'm glad you told me that, because I was going to give the requirement to someone else, but now you've said that, I'll give it to you. Really? No, it's not going to happen in a gazillion years. So just have a conversation and begin to think of people as people, not sources of revenue. Either people that can give you vacancies or people you can place and make money on a placement fee. Start to think of them as people that you want to be interested in, and take the time to get to know them a little bit, because then what they do is they begin to tell you more stuff. They'll begin to share with you a little bit about what's happening in their world. And then you're into the space. Then you're beginning to move into the space. And I would say 10 minutes a day, you know, fine. 20 minutes would be awesome. The second thing that you need to do is you need to understand who you're targeting. So if I said to you, okay, give me 30 names of people, decision makers in different companies, and if you had those companies as clients, active clients who are giving you work, that would change your world. You would be a millionaire, right? If who are those people? And it's not difficult to find out who they are, really. You know, you probably know half of them anyway. And the ones that you don't know, it's not difficult to look at people's CVs or go into LinkedIn, and you can take as long as you like. Take 3 months if you want, 4, whatever. But draw up that list, because that's your target list. And the more you focus on that list, the more likely you are to achieve it. Okay. So then what are you going to do in your 10 or 20 minutes a day? Well, you know, if you go into LinkedIn and you go down to someone's activity on their LinkedIn profile. You click on it, and it takes you to a page where you can look at their activities, something or other, their posts and their articles, I think.
Yeah, what they've been looking at, what they're posting, and what they've published, I think.
So you click on posts at the top, and then take that URL that it gives you at the top there and stick it in a spreadsheet.
Yes.
So you've now got 30 spreadsheet items, 30 different links that when you press them, it takes you to that person's activity, so you can see what they've been doing. And you just have to cycle round, spend a few minutes each day going in, and if you can, comment on it or do something, interact in some way, providing it's authentic, and begin to get yourself known by these people. Because if you do that, the research tells us they're much more likely to accept an invitation to connect on LinkedIn if you've interacted online first. I mean, massively so. In some cases, 90% conversion rate, huge.
Yeah, right? I totally agree with that theory.
It is. We did some research on it last year, in fact. And I've got all the data somewhere, but essentially it's the highest form. There are other things that you can do, but it's the highest form of conversion rates. Interact with them several times, not like, oh, well, I'll put a comment in here. Oh, I'll invite because da, da, da. No, I don't mean that. I mean, gradually get known to them by giving authentic comments and adding value to their posts. And then you can connect with them. And this is all in your 20 minutes a day. It's no big deal, really. And then, excuse me, then, so change your mentality, right? I'm going to be into this. I'm going to find the time. Then you're going to be doing this sort of activity in the time that you've put. And then the third thing is learn how to use content properly. Definitely. Learn how to be able to identify a piece of content, how to create it in the right format, because you can use video, you can use written, you can use audio, and you can use graphic. So find out what works best for you. Set yourself up a delivery stream, so whatever you want, you can deliver. I'm telling you now, ladies and gentlemen, Fiverr. If you've not used it, check it out. We get a lot of stuff done on Fiverr. You know, 20 quid to get something done for you, rather than paying a UK.
These are where freelancers advertise their services.
But prices, you got to shop around a little bit, but like getting something like this edited, probably 50 quid.
Yeah.
Right. So no big deal. So you don't have to build all this kind of team with your business, or you don't have to hire expensive UK-based or European-based marketing firms. You can just build up your own little pattern of people that can produce this content with you, and then learn how to leverage it, learn how to use it to change the dialogue, change that narrative away from, hey, got any work? You haven't? I'm off then, to, oh, look at this. This is really cool. I think you'll like this. And honestly, it's like magic. It's magic. And then gradually you can do, instead of doing 20 minutes, you can do 30 minutes because the work started to come to you, and then half a day, and then a couple of days a week, and the work is still coming to you. Then it's time to hire a resourcer, of course. But the point is that this isn't magic, and it's always been like this. This isn't new. The way in which you build relationships, you create trust and rapport and affinity hasn't changed ever. It's just the way in which we implement it has changed now. That's all, because we've got all this modern technology around us. It hasn't changed.
Mike, one of the things that comes up a lot, I think, is you get through to someone, and when you get through to them, they very quickly give you a series of objections as to why they don't want to carry on that conversation with you. And I've just put you on the spot here, but I'm sure people come up against this all the time, even now. How would you get past that point?
Stop making cold calls for a start. Stop making cold calls.
Really, this is quite radical.
I thought people stopped doing that in the 90s, but apparently people still do. No,
they do.
Create warm calls by interacting first online. That's the deal. Is add value and interact, add value and interact. And you'll get to the stage where it's obvious a call is the right thing to do. It's obvious. Not necessarily we use a phrase called pigeonhole pitching. So with a pigeonhole pitch, it's not like, give us a piece of work. It's like, well, there might come a point where you might need someone like me, or you might want to try someone different, which is fine. It's your timetable. But when you do, this is who I work with. This is the problem they have. This is how I solve it. And this is why people use me. It's a pigeonhole pitch, it's called. So but I'm not even talking about that necessarily. That's why events are absolutely awesome, because you can ring someone up and say, come to this event. I picked up 2 pieces of work last week when I was on my holidays.
Yes, I read about it.
Yeah, right. And that didn't come from something I did that week. Those things started a long time ago. I mean, again, to give you an example, I picked up a new client about 2 weeks before I went on my hollybobs, and they came from what's called an AIDA campaign. I don't know whether people are familiar with AIDA campaigns, but
no, what does it mean?
it came. I'll go to it in a second if I've got a moment. Yeah, I've got a moment to do.
Yeah.
That came from an AIDA campaign we ran in 2019.
Wow.
Right? So 2 years I've been working at that relationship, and now it's come, and it's a big deal, you know. So you just have to get away from that concept of I make a call and get a sale. I mean, I know you've got to do that to a certain extent, and I'm saying all day except for 20 minutes you've got to do that, right? That's fine.
Yeah.
Don't get in trouble with your boss, right? But you've got to move away from that eventually, else you'll be doing that forever. An AIDA connection campaign. So AIDA is very old, been around for donkey's years. You can Google it, but it's AIDA, attention, interest, desire, and action. So you can use AIDA when you're writing emails. You can use it when you're running campaigns. You can use it when you're doing a presentation, when you're doing a pitch. You do something to grab their attention, then you build a little bit of interest, then you create desire, and then there's a simple call to action at the end. It's how we run our campaigns for our clients.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So this was one of those campaigns. I can't remember what might have been a chocolate campaign, so I can't remember, but it was something. And he came with that. But we just stuck with it. If I'd have made the decision at that point, if I'd have said to that person, do you want to do business with me? You'd have said no. And that would have been that. He's now a client. See?
So if you sort of say if you'd done it too early, yeah.
Yeah.
You would have lost them.
Because that cycle, you know, if you contact someone, if they're not in the buying zone or the pre-buying zone, then they're just not interested because they're busy people with a million things to do, quite frankly. And recruitment isn't one of them. It's not important to them. And at that time, it's only important to them when it's important to them. So if you're trying to talk about recruitment and they're not interested, well, you're going to blow out. So in answer to the question that you asked me, and I wasn't being facetious, is, I mean, making cold calls is like kissing frogs, really. And occasionally you will catch a handsome
Some
prince.
people quite like it. I think Snow White did, or was it Snow White?
Yeah. Well, I quite like it too. When I used to do it, the first 3 months of my recruitment career was cold calling. And I think you get addicted to it after a while. It's like playing a slot machine, isn't it? This is going to be the one, you know?
Yeah.
But it's not very scalable. It's not a particularly good method, really, to scale. It's a great way if you're going to get vacancies, just hit the phones and eventually you will get vacancies. But like I said at the early stages of this chat, high value clients value their suppliers. So you ring in and speak to one of these people, are they going to say, well, I really value my suppliers, but you've turned my head in the 3 minutes that you've been talking to me, have all this work?
Yeah.
Might. I mean, statistically, somebody will, but I don't really think that's the way to build a business, is it? I don't think so.
No.
I think go with the.
I got the wrong Disney story there, but anyway, somebody in the Disney world kissed a frog. But no, you have said you've said so. I'm gonna have to watch this all over again to make sure I've picked up everything that you've said. But I think what you're saying is, obviously, as recruiters are taught to be quite transactional, you know, where there are certain KPIs and numbers that are expected. But I know many more businesses now are looking at output rather than activity. But I do love the fact that what you're saying is it's a longer process, and if you kind of pounce too soon, all of that work you've done is likely to just fade away. And we've done exactly this, you know, particularly on LinkedIn over the last 9 to 12 months. And we talk about it all the time. And you and I were talking about how important this personal branding piece is, these shows, the webinars, the events, all of these different things that we're so fortunate to be able to do now. As a consequence, we could do it before, but COVID has kind of really brought it into the forefront. And I think what you're saying is, you know, don't chase, just take your time, and the results will follow at the end of it.
Balance it up. You've got to eat now. You've got to go and eat now. You know, you've got to go and hunt and kill and eat now because you'll
get a takeaway somewhere. Yeah.
But you need at the same time to be beginning to build up this little nest egg of seeds that you can then plant, and then at some point they'll grow, and then you don't need to hunt as much next time. So it's a balance in the two, really. Yeah,
and just 10 or 20 minutes a day should hopefully make that happen.
It will start
gourmet feast
for sure. Yeah,
fantastic. Mike, thank you so much. If anyone wants to connect to Mike, I know obviously you're on LinkedIn. You produce tons and tons of content, which is fantastic. And I think Katie has put in all of your different. You've got your Pioneers group.
The Pioneers.
Talk about that.
The Pioneers is the free subscriptions. It's free. I mean, we put a lot of stuff on there, micro courses, research that we've done, white papers, all of our recordings from our shows go on there. Everything goes on there. It's free to join if you want to get in there. dip your bread, take what you want. We won't sell to you, I promise, on the back of it. So.
That's brilliant. No, that's one of the worst things. You download something and within seconds they're on the phone trying to sell you something. Yeah. Thank you. Mike, thank you so much for being my guest. The content has been invaluable. I've had lots of people say, really great, well done. Thanks for a great session. Times have changed from when I used to have to stand up and make sales calls and wasn't allowed to sit down until I had a meeting or a job. No more, Claire. You won't be doing that in the future, I'm sure.
Okay.
Lovely to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Speak to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.